My hashtag Me Too story. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and I want to finally tell my hashtag Me Too story, which I should have shared sooner. Maybe I didn't because I felt deep shame, and I was afraid of being open about what really happened to me. Now, being that I am a homosexual male that lived in San Francisco and New York, there's numerous stories that I could be telling, as I've been the victim of countless things that are legally sex crimes, as that's really just part of the gay scene. But this one in particular was the most dramatic and severe, so I'm going to be telling it. Keep in mind, I will be telling this story in two different ways, starting with the hashtag MeToo version. But both versions are completely true. Probably about 7 or 8 years ago, when I was living in San Francisco, I went out to a bar with a longtime friend of mine, somebody I was very close with, and trusted deeply, somebody that I never thought would be capable of harming me, that I believed actually valued my feelings and comfort as an individual. At the bar, which we attended with another friend, we met 3 other guys. When the bar closed at 2 a.m., we decided to go back over to the studio apartment that I lived in by myself, because it was always safe to afterparty there and be a bit loud. Once inside my apartment, my friend began fooling around with one of the other guys that he met at the bar, which he did on my bed. This wasn't a big deal to me in the slightest, but it got kind of awkward when my other friend started fooling around with the other guy that was there, and I had to just kind of awkwardly play music and talk to the last guy. Eventually, after maybe an hour, everybody besides my longtime friend ended up leaving my apartment. It's hard to remember why exactly they left when they did, but I do remember that one of them had a car, so they probably got a ride with him, which is why they left. I simply wanted to chat a bit and listen to some music, which I did for a long while from my computer chair. However, my friend was in my bed, and wasn't really saying a whole lot, which was kind of awkward, especially considering the fact that I started to get kind of cold after a while, and I wanted to get into my own bed. Finally, after about 20 or 30 minutes, I decided to do just that. Once I got there, I probably kept talking for a while as I became at least subconsciously aware that my friend was still aroused from his brief sexual encounter from less than an hour ago, as he never had the opportunity to get naked and actually have an orgasm. More so, while I had known this friend for over a decade and wasn't attracted to him, he was attracted to me, and had made numerous passes at me. Still, I thought that he would respect my boundaries, at least certainly in my own bed, that he kind of just invited himself into after a drawn-out series of events. Thus, I was honestly a bit surprised when I realized that the bed covers were rapidly moving up and down next to me, as a result of the fact that he was pleasuring himself. At that point, I think I stopped talking entirely and tried to pretend to be asleep. I even turned away from him to make sure that he got the point that I wasn't interested in doing anything sexually, making sure to keep a bit of a distance between the two of us, ending up very close to the edge of my bed, almost falling off. It was at that moment that he turned to face me, as opposed to lying on his back, which he had been doing prior. At this point, I need to be perfectly candid. My former friend was extremely well endowed, and had a massive ego based around the size of his penis. Truthfully, his dick size was always a very strange thing, as if it was something that he'd overcompensate with. You see, I was always a much more attractive guy overall, in the way that I always dated a lot more guys, and tended to be approached more frequently by other attractive men. He was always a bit jealous of my natural decent looks, my charisma, and whatever else it was that made it so that guys were interested in pursuing me ahead of pursuing him, when much or most of the time, he was also interested in those guys himself. Thus, he commonly bragged about the size of his penis, and even showed it off in public, seemingly as a way to overcompensate for the fact that he actually wasn't all that attractive to guys, for whatever reason, at least not compared to me, for whatever reason, and apparently this really burned, because I was one of those guys that was never attracted to him, and he was attracted to me. for whatever reason. And so, although it was completely intrusive and to be upsetting to be violated in my own bed, it at least made sense when he began pressing his dick against the small of my back, right above my butt. I probably had most of my clothes on, but it didn't deter him. He did this for a long while, and I gave him no signal that I was interested. Oddly, it almost seemed to make him more interested in a twisted sort of way. To my shock and complete discomfort, he pulled up my shirt and began cock-slapping my lower back. I'm really not sure what he was thinking. It was as if he was trying to prove a point of dominance over me, as if to say, "Check it out. Feel how big my dick is. You know you like it. You've always been shy, but I know you can't resist it." I'm not sure why he didn't understand that the only reason I didn't get up and leave was because it was my bed, and the only reason I didn't yell, "Get the hell out!" was because he was my friend of many years, and I didn't want to cause a scene. Maybe I was scared, and maybe I should have said something, but I didn't. I had no idea what to do, so I just let him lie there, repeatedly hitting his erect sexual organ right above my anus for probably about 20 minutes or so, until he eventually tired out, or decided to get up and leave. I couldn't believe it had happened to me. Not with him. Certainly not in my own home. #MeToo. I was the victim of a horrific sex crime. Far worse than Louis C.K. asking if he could masturbate in front of women. Alright kids, now that my horrible attempt at an Academy Award for Best Male Actor is over, I'm really not that good of an actor, I'll tell you what really happened and how I really felt about it. Keep in mind that absolutely nothing I said during the first version of the story was untrue, minus how I actually felt about the events at the time and soon after. Also, I left out a few crucial details that definitely will make a huge difference once you hear them. You see, my friend and I had taken MDMA together that evening, also known as Molly, Ecstasy, E, and X if you are super old. We did this together likely for the first time ever, even though we had known each other for much longer than a decade. This was during a phase of my life, living in San Francisco, when it wasn't entirely uncommon for me to do drugs like MDMA, and in case you've never done it before, it completely alters your state of being to a much more extreme degree than marijuana or alcohol. You see, when you take MDMA, you become uncontrollably happy and excited, and you can enjoy almost any type of music, though heavy metal, hard rock stuff, not always. Regardless, you might start feeling as if you like anybody around you, even if you don't really know them, and even if you don't end up liking them at all the next day. Thus, it's hard to say exactly how those three guys ended up at my apartment. I might have invited them over myself, hoping to have a fun party as long as possible, not thinking about the fact that they weren't on drugs, or the fact that two of them were interested in having sex with both of my friends. You see, when you are on MDMA, you generally can't get an erection very easily, though many people enjoy making out and fooling around while they are on it. And females apparently do enjoy sex for the most part, from what I've heard. That being said, when people were over at my house, I was just playing music while high, and I didn't really care what was going on a great deal, because again, I was high. And then an hour or so passed, and I stopped being as high as I was, and everybody was gone besides my friend, who was in my bed. Thus, eventually I started coming down from the drug entirely, getting a little bit tired, which left me both disinterested in talking, listening to music, and also had me feeling a bit cold, as I probably had a window open due to all the people that had just left a few minutes ago. That being said, it's not at all uncommon for people to come off of the drug and suddenly find themselves sexually interested, as the drug inhibits male erections, but for some odd reason tends to inspire within the male user an urge to jerk off or have sex once he's come down. I simply wanted to get in bed, and wasn't all that surprised that my friend was jerking off a bit while he was next to me, even though it was completely inappropriate, to be perfectly honest. But still, I could excuse it a bit because mind-altering substances definitely alter one's understanding of personal boundaries anyway, and he'd always never been one to understand boundaries all that well anyhow, because I'm fairly positive that he has an undiagnosed personality disorder. That said, I turned away from him hoping that he'd take a hint, and while I was a bit surprised that he didn't, it certainly wasn't a huge surprise, and more so, eventually, after he was cock-slapping me, I honestly just thought it was kind of funny, because it really takes a lot to shock me or any reasonably attractive San Francisco guy who parties a lot. Again, sexual assault was a fact of life in gay San Francisco, if you have any social life at all and you're at all decent looking. Thus, I legitimately just laid there, quietly giggling, and I'm still unsure whether he heard me or not. Though, maybe after about 20 minutes or so, he finally did hear a particularly audible chuckle, which is why he finally stopped. So, legally, I was absolutely the victim of a sex crime. If he were somebody important, could I use this story to ruin him in the current political climate? I absolutely could, easily. Would I be interested in doing that? No, because I value my integrity, unlike seemingly most people. The point I'm making with this video is to illustrate just how common awkward sexual moments really are, how little people tend to actually care about them a lot of the time, but how easily we can pile on the melodrama to embellish them, leave out key details, and make it sound like some horrible crime that essentially scarred us for life, when really, it was always just a funny story that I'd use to poke fun at him on occasion when he gave me a reason. But, by all means, you're more than welcome to victim shame me in the comments and tell me how I should really feel.